It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
Introducing the Blazor Power Hour.
No, seriously, it's time for Blazor Power Hour.
Hey friends, it's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
You're checking out the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
It's Blazor Power Hour. Go Ed!
Are you ready? Are you set? Got everything all ready to go? Let's do it. Let's do the Blazor Power Hour.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's the Blazor Power Hour, where the introduction is better than the content. No, I make that joke every week, but I love that intro so much. We have so many amazing people on that, and they're going to keep growing as I add them. And I have a special show today because I have a guest with me. I have the one and only Layla Porter with me. You may know her from LaylaCodesIt. Welcome, Layla.
Hi, Ed. Hi, everybody.
So it's time for the Blazor Power Hour. We're going to cover a single topic in 1 hour. This week, I've chosen the video element in HTML5 because there's not really included support with Blazor, so we're going to have to build some. So this means some JavaScript interop, and this is going to take a bit of an effort to do in an hour, so I've already got some code ready to go. So have your questions ready. I'll try to answer them as we go. And Layla is here. She is part of another stream that we're doing Thursday and Friday, where we're going to be using this video component to build an application. So that should be fun.
Yes, I'm quite excited by that, Ed. It's going to be good.
So we've got Alyssa Nicole, who's going to join us on Thursday and Friday as well. And we are going to build a top secret app. I don't know if we've shared any details other than it's going to be Valentine's Day themed. I think that's about
and video.
All we know.
You've given that one away now.
And video. So we're going to use some video. Let me make sure I've got my Zoom tool set up here. And that is definitely not it, because I know how hard these things are to see on stream. I want to show my project layout real quick here. So I know you've done some Blazor, Layla. Have you done any work with Razor class libraries?
I've done a little bit. When I've worked on, I went through the Blazing Pizza tutorial, and they covered it in there. Now, are they similar to the Razor class libraries that you get in Identity, or are those specific to Razor Pages projects, or are they the same thing?
They do share some similar DNA. At one point, the Razor Pages class library that you're talking about was the default template, and they've changed that now to where Blazor is the default template. They do have some different internal mechanics on how the assets get built. So you want to make sure you pick the right template. If you're going to do Blazor, just hit File, New Razor Template Project and use that template. If you're going to build the Razor Pages template, make sure you check the box that says something about like use pages or something like that. And that will give you the Razor Pages functionality with it. The nice thing about this is with either of those models, you can share component logic and routing and all of those type of things right from a class library. So we've got one of those today. I've got the code in another project, and I'm moving it to this class library today. So we're going to build a webcam component, and then that is being kind of tested and hosted in the example page here. So I've got these two connected. I was doing this very quickly before the show started. So let's see if this works so far. We have no...
So just to clarify, Ed, the webcam component, is that the Razor library? And then the webcam example is the Blazor app. Is that right?
That's correct.
Cool.
Yep. Thanks for clarifying. That is exactly what we're going for. And right now we just have this component 1, which is the example that comes with the File New Project template. So I'm going to put that in the running webcam example and just make sure that that component renders correctly. And it does. And what's good about validating at least this part is the Razor class library is bringing along with it the CSS that's needed to run that webcam component as well. So that kind of validates that all the assets have come along with that class library. So we have encapsulation of HTML, any JavaScript that's needed for the component to work, and any CSS for that component to render properly is brought along with it.
So all just scoped into that one component and inaccessible out externally from anything else.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to shift over to the Sources tab here, Layla. And if you look under this Content folder, this is where that component code gets generated and kind of embedded in that resource is this Content folder. Then it's namespaced after that. So you can have multiple content folders with different component namespaces depending on how many of these class libraries or NuGet packages you add to your project. And inside of that, you can see the bundled any static assets that belong to that component. So we're going to be putting some static assets in here. That's why I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. All right, so we've got component 1. That's kind of like the obligatory like class.cs.
Yeah.
So we won't need that. We can remove it from here, and I'll probably delete it from the project here shortly, but we'll keep it around just in case we need to like troubleshoot anything.
Cool.
Next thing we need to do is add a new component to the class library. So I'm going to do new item here, and we'll do new Razor component. And I'm going to call this webcam. And webcam.razor is going to host our webcam component. With HTML5, we actually got support for some of this with this video tag. So one thing I try to tell folks that are coming into Blazor is know your HTML. Like Blazor is very much HTML. It's web standards. So knowing your HTML is really going to help you, right? So this allows us to natively host video components inside of the browser, and you can add things like static video sources like movies and whatnot. And this is this is something that came in HTML5 and kind of standardized video across browsers. So I don't know if you've done any of this prior to HTML5, Layla, but this was like a very hot mess from the very beginning because there was no standard.
I can imagine. I've mostly for the past few years worked much more in the back end or in CRUD style front ends where we didn't have anything fun like video. Who would want that?
So I worked on a project at a company I was at where we had an internal learning management portal, and we were trying to build a modern LMS with video support. And we were in kind of that transition period where there was still IE users that didn't have access to this brand new HTML5 video tag. So there was a debate over whether we should use the old school Flash approach.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, I won that argument by pointing out that it was cheaper to buy everyone in the organization a new iPad than it was to develop something that supported legacy IE browsers.
Wowzers. I bet you were pretty pleased with that argument one.
When it comes to money, math always wins. And when you're adding up developer costs and then you show the cost of an iPad per person, and you're like, it's cheaper to just buy everybody a HTML5 compliant device to view this stuff on.
Yeah. And then, everyone's happy then because developers aren't pulling their hair out and getting, stuck with all this older technologies. Although the very first programming I did was with ActionScript. So I have a little fond place for Flash.
Oh, same here. I loved that era of Flash.
Yeah.
I love the animation aspects of it. The transition
great.
Animations and stuff were wonderful. So we're going to use this video tag. And as the source, instead of a static video element or static video file, we're going to try to use our webcam.
Okay.
So this is where support in Blazor breaks down. And you can see this is going to be very quickly because all we have is an empty video tag that's going to do nothing. So what we want to do is have this tell us that we have a webcam available. You get that pop-up dialog that the user has to confirm, and we're going to feed that video stream into the video tag as the source. So we're going to need some more code here. And again, I've got it off screen. I don't want to mislead anybody and make you think I am live coding any of this. Yeah, this has been baked and bulletproof tested. So we're going to kind of hack away at that code instead. So you don't have to see me type all of this out. I'll comment a little bit of this out as we go as well. So I've got a video element. I'm going to be using a reference in here as well. So in something like jQuery or just general JavaScript, you have code like this. That's like document. I won't type it all out, but it's document.get element by ID, etc. And that goes and fetches.
Yeah.
Or as many of you probably know from jQuery, if you've done any of it, it is something like this.
jQuery.
Yeah. jQuery. I love jQuery too. Nothing wrong with
It was
jQuery.
That was the last time I did JavaScript, to be honest, properly. Was with everything was DOM based, and it was all to do with jQuery, and it was such a relief to use jQuery after having to use vanilla JavaScript, and it was just so much easier to read and more intuitive. And now everyone's like, jQuery, but it's just, I still want to go back and use it when I start JavaScript. It's so much easier.
So John Bristow and I were having a discussion about this on our podcast yesterday, and we came to the conclusion that jQuery got a bad rap because developers write bad code. And those developers have moved on to write bad Angular code, so now nobody's happy with Angular.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what your tool is, you can write bad code. I think there's some really well-written jQuery apps out there.
Absolutely. The same happened with Entity Framework, if you think about it. People are like, oh, why would you touch Entity Framework? Well, it's not Entity Framework's fault that you write really like shoddy, link statements or whatever,
Yeah, it's totally SQL's fault. I'm gonna blame
Completely.
the DBA, right? So the @ref in Blazor is very similar to what you do in jQuery if you want to get that video element. So instead of selecting this element by ID or any of that stuff behind the scenes, we're just going to let Blazor pass this value into our JavaScript using that ref tag, because we're going to need access to that video tag.
Awesome.
And then also we're going to want to trap some error messages because the user can deny access to your camera. So we want some sort of fallback here to just at least put a message up that says, that the connection to the webcam just didn't happen for some reason or another. That content folder I showed you earlier, Layla, that goes, there's a little bit of a naming convention that gets a little skewed here. That goes in our www root folder. So this www root folder actually becomes content on our application that's using this library as a dependency.
Right.
So this ends up content here, but it's called www root here, and we have a www root here as well. So that might be a little confusing for some folks. But essentially, they do the same thing, but the naming convention gets changed as you consume that class library.
And that's done automatically. We don't have to do that. That's just what happens. Yeah? Okay.
Yes, absolutely correct. So we want to add a JavaScript file in here. I know I said the forbidden word when we're doing Blazor, right?
You're never going to escape it. When you work with web, it's still going to be there. You can avoid it, but it's still going to have to touch it.
Yep, it is a necessary evil. No, it's not that bad. It's not that bad, folks.
It's okay when you remember how to do things.
The thing that does catch me, though, is like the compilation bits. If I was going to write something bigger than what we're doing here, there's like a threshold you hit, in my opinion, where it's like, okay, it's better to do this in TypeScript. We're writing a lot of JavaScript. We need to do something a little bit more reliable as far as like type safety and all of that stuff goes.
Unless you just do what I do when I write TypeScript. Any, there,
So we have our webcam JS file. We're going to go pretty modern here. We're going to use a module, JavaScript module pattern here. And we're going to use like the latest like ES6 style of JavaScript modules, because those are super compatible with browsers these days, and also has lazy loading support in Blazor. So if you haven't tried this out yet, it is pretty cool.
I haven't, so I'm excited to see this. You're going to educate me.
Good. I'm glad I can bring something to the table. So what we need to do is we need to initialize this webcam. So again, I'm not going to pretend I'm typing this. I'm just going to paste it off screen and tell you what we're doing. So we're if you're not familiar with JavaScript modules, this is kind of like a scoping mechanic that is now built into JavaScript. And we can say this is similar to saying public.
Yep.
With 2 U's. Because that's how that's the proper English spelling, right? That's what you guys do. 2 U's, right?
We're an OU. And we don't say it public. Causing trouble. Keep him honest, chat. He's causing trouble. I'm going to start teaching him Britishisms.
So we'll say public here, just for .NET devs to kind of get the idea that export kind of means the same thing. We're gonna make this a public method. We're gonna call it initialize, and we're gonna take in a video element. Remember that @ref thing that we did on this here? We're gonna pass that in to the initialize function. We're also going to pass in a .NET reference here. So the .NET reference is going to give, so we've got the element from the component, and then we have a class reference that instance reference we're going to pass in, because when we initialize the camera, we need to go back to Blazor and tell Blazor that the camera initialized. And this is an asynchronous behavior. So if I, at the bottom of this function, just returned some value here, this value will get returned before the webcam initializes, because it's running asynchronously. So this will happen. It will immediately return whatever the value is. So I can't say something like, give me back something from the camera, because it hasn't initialized yet. So it's always going to return the same thing. So we need to come up with like a callback type of behavior.
Yeah.
So we're going to give JavaScript a reference to an instance inside of our Blazor app. And then when it is done with its asynchronous invocation here, it will go back and make that callback and tell us that it's done.
You're bringing back all horrible memories of when I had to learn React.
So we've got two outputs here. So there's two things that can happen when we initialize this. We can fail, and we can be successful. So we're going to try to initialize that camera. We'll do that initialization code right here. So we're going to set up a stream, and we're going to say navigator, media devices, get user media, and there's some constraints that we need to set up as well. So let me get those out here.
I just learnt about this navigator the other day. I'd never seen it until Monday when I was trying to access the microphone, and I hadn't seen it before. So seeing it again, it's obviously a new thing since I did JavaScript. And just to clarify, the handle success and handle error, they're now privates, aren't they? Because they're not within the export. Is that right? They're scoped only within here. So I couldn't go and call these externally anywhere. They're only for that initialize function to call privately.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. So JavaScript modules are really nice, and you'll see how those play out with Blazor as well. You used to have to use like a Babel.js, kind of like transpiler to use these. Yep. And then loading those into your JavaScript application used to also be kind of difficult. So you had to decide like which translation of this format you were going to use. There was a Node.js, there was a web one, it was not standardized. Now this stuff is standardized. You can comfortably use this. And if you're going to use it in a standard JavaScript scenario, you would do it with a script tag.
Yep.
And you also have to say, I think there's a module attribute or something like that. There's an attribute you have to use to tell your applicant or your browser that is a module. But if you add that little attribute to it, it can consume this natively now, which wasn't a thing until pretty recently in web history. In Blazor, we'll do it a little bit different, so we won't have that script tag here. We're going to load it dynamically, which is really cool. So we've got our constraints here. We're not going to be capturing audio. You mentioned audio and something you were working on. We're going to turn audio off for this. We're not interested in that for our app. If you wanted to use this, we could put flags in here too that you could pass through the function, however you'd like to handle these. For our purposes today, we're just going to go ahead and assume that we only want video.
Cool.
We'll pass that constraint in, and when we pass in this video constraint to get user media, it's going to tell the browser to look out to the OS and ask it for any media devices that provide video. When it does that, it's going to prompt us up at the top of the browser if we'd like to if the user would like to allow access to those cameras. And if that user says no, then we'll hit this catch and we'll have an exception thrown.
Okay.
If they okay it, we'll get a video stream, and then we can pass that video stream over to our handle success, and then we can apply that video stream to our video element.
And that will happen immediately. If I say block, that will immediately, it won't even try handle success or anything. It will skip straight to the exception. Is that right?
Yes. Or it will upload your video straight to my private cloud. One of the two. No, I'm just kidding. It will immediately not allow camera access.
It'll be like, all ads are banned.
I just got myself canceled from the internet.
That's it. Right. Yeah.
So, creepy jokes aside, we're going to handle success here. Sorry. We're going to take in the stream, and I'm going to pass along the reference to that video element as well. I could have made video element global, but I chose to kind of go a little more of a functional approach and not maintain any state in this piece of JavaScript. It's up to, if you wanted to take this and use it for your own thing, it's up to you if you wanted to kind of worry about state management. I decided to just pass things through functionally. In case there were like multiple videos on the page, then each would have their, it wouldn't be overwriting like the state of this, whatever this was keeping track of. State management is really tricky when you're working with JavaScript interop. It's a whole thing we don't have time for on the show today, but just for reference, I'm not maintaining any state here. I'm just passing variables through the system. So this is going to get the video from that webcam, from that stream. And then we're going to, this is just for some debugging purposes. So we can go in and say window.stream, and it'll show us what is currently attached to this, this interop instance here. And then the actual work being done is right here. So video, we're setting the source object to the video stream, and then we're going to invoke play on that. So that will, it will assign the value. If we look back at the video element, if you're going to do this statically, the sources look like this. We're doing it programmatically. So we're setting the source here. So src equals the stream from the webcam. Okay.
Where did we set? Oh, I see. We've got window.vid equals video there. Okay.
Yeah, this is debugging info, and then the video is the video element, and the source is this source attribute. We're setting the stream.
We've passed it in, haven't we? That's why. Yeah, gotcha. I was like, where did we define video? It's just magically there, and then I just saw we've passed it in. Okay, ignore me. Moving on.
No, that's actually good to point out, because I called it video element here, and then when I passed it in here, I changed the name to video. So I don't know if that's just bad naming practices for me. Maybe I should.
I think we'll go with that. Not me like losing the plot. It's your naming. Yeah.
I'll update this. So it says video. There we go. So we know we're passing the same variable through to here. And then we're going to set the source, and then we're going to invoke play on it. So it actually shows on the screen. If you don't say play, it won't. It'll, I think it'll either show paused, like it'll show a single frame, or it just won't show until it's played and then paused. So it does, you do have control if you look at the spec that I had up here. If I can get my browser window back, there are video controls baked into this element as well. There we go. So there's play and pause and all of those things. Those functionalities are baked in, so you can do those.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I haven't looked at this for so long. It's really interesting to see how far it's come on and how much easier it is.
And then just for a little more simplicity here, I'm going to take out the debugging info just for a minute, just so it's a little bit easier to see. Oh, this was debugging stuff too, I believe. So the main thing here is getting the stream, and applying it to the video element and playing it. And then we want to handle any errors as well. So I want to come in here. I'll throw the error handling bits in. And again, I'm going to get a little bit functional with this. So there's a couple different error scenarios here, and then I'm going to kind of consolidate all of those functionalities into just one error message.
Okay.
So it's going to take those and it's kind of like trapping different errors and then making sense of them in a human readable way and then outputting those to a single string so we can display it in our pop-up.
Okay, so I'm just trying to parse what it says. It's I'm just trying to figure out what but these are just ones that you've pulled out. It's not okay. It's not supported, and permissions haven't been granted. Okay, I'm on it now. It takes a moment for me to parse it. Oh, we've got a raid.
Oh, we do. We do. Let's see here.
Eagle, so nice to see you.
That's weird. It's not showing on my console here, but thank you for the raid, Eagle. Appreciate that. And good eye, Layla. You must have your stream. What's it called? Twitch. Chat.
I've got my 3 monitors on, so you're in my big one in front, and then I've got the stream live up to my left, and then I've got a blank one over here where OBS would normally sit. I'm not having to do any production. It's so relaxing. So Eagle's just asking what we're working on. Do you want to give a quick, for the raiders, Ed, a quick pass over of what we're doing very quickly?
Yeah, so we are working with the native video HTML5 tag in Blazor, and we're going to feed a webcam stream into that video tag so we can make use of webcams in an app. And later this week, you'll see us actually use this code in an application so you can see exactly what we're going to do with it. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet.
Oh, no, it's too exciting.
There's another team that we won't speak of, right? Those guys.
The losers, you mean? That team.
Yeah. So the losing team, we don't want to let them know anything more than the fact that we're using video, but we're going to do something really cool with the video.
Yeah.
So tune in Thursday and Friday to hear what Layla and I and Alyssa are going to do with the video. We haven't written any C# code yet. We've only written some JavaScript. So we've got at the top level here, just one method that initializes this video element. It takes in the video element, it takes a .NET reference to that video class instance. When we have a successful connection to the video camera, it sets up that video tag. If the person that is in charge of their browser says they don't want that access to happen, it will fire off an error which will get bubbled up to our component. So we need to make use of that JavaScript now. I'm going to make this super easy to read. Instead of dropping a code block here, I'm going to actually do a code behind page for this, or code behind file for this.
How do you feel about that? Is that I've heard that's called an anti-pattern really in Blazor. I mean, it does keep your separation of concerns, but when I first looked at Blazor in 2018, it was like, oh, it's an anti-pattern.
I don't know why folks would say it's an anti-pattern, because essentially it's just a partial class. So you're moving the code to a different view, but you're not really, there's not much of a separation of concerns happening, in my opinion. I'm not doing it because they're different concerns. I'm doing it because it's easier for readability and organization, and the tooling is better. So if you're in a Razor view like this, and I'm in a code block, and I type something like file, and I hit Control dot, I don't get any IntelliSense.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting.
If I were in here, I think file should do something. Yep, system.io is what you're looking for. So I'm lazy, and this helps me code faster. So I like the partial if I've got a lot of code to write. And for this, it's going to take a few lines. In my rule of thumb, and this is just me, my personal opinion, and I'm pretty zoomed in here, so it's a little bit kind of a bad example. But if I hit a threshold of I can't see all of my component in a single view inside of my editor, then I split it. So if I have HTML that spans past this and I have to scroll to see either more HTML or more code, then I put it in a code behind file.
Then you could have them side by side as well, can't you? When you're developing, you have parallel windows, and that's much better. So chat, Eagle is saying, I think it can be an anti-pattern if you're doing it because you are creating very large components that do too many things. So you might want to consider thinking about the single responsibility principle then. And that's what he's saying. It's not a separation of concerns because it's all the same concern. It's just making it more readable and more manageable. We do have Sambhav Sachetti. I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sorry. Would you use mvvm pattern with Blazor for production applications?
So in my opinion, that one's an anti-pattern. MVVM, if you're comfortable with it, if you have an already existing application that is written in like web forms, or not web forms, I'm sorry, Windows forms, XAML, Xamarin, and you're sharing a code base between a Blazor front end and some other front end, then by all means, MVVM is a good pattern to follow. If you're just building a Blazor app and it's only going to ever be a Blazor app, I think you'll find out pretty quickly that Blazor already has a feel of model view presenter type of a pattern baked in, and it's not by design or anything. It's just the way that just Blazor functions feels like an MVP pattern. So you're going to have a pattern on top of a pattern, and you're going to start kicking off events and stuff, and realize there's already events that are internally kicking off that do the same thing. I found it very repetitive. So you already have initialized component and all of those type of things. So you end up getting like this double initialization code and a bunch of weird model binding things that just doesn't need to happen because there's events being triggered by Blazor already. Try it yourself, try it on a demo app and see what you feel. And if you come to that same conclusion, which I think you will, then just abandon it. But if you have, again, if you have another front end that already uses MVVM, then and you're trying to make dual use of that code, then it works well for those type of scenarios.
But not in isolation. So is this you now doing the interop? Is that what we're looking at now? You're going to start bringing in JavaScript into our C#? Because I've not done much of this, so I'm quite interested to see how this is done.
Exactly what I'm doing, and I'm already creating an error here because this is not in the JS folder. So let's move that down. So our webcam JS, if we look in our www root folder, there's our JavaScript our interrupt that we wrote. So this is going to be where we find that. Here's where that tooling thing comes in again. I want to inject the .NET runtime. So this is going to give me an IJS runtime instance. So by default, dependency injection gives me the JavaScript runtime here, and that's going to let us take advantage of that.
So you don't need to go and add that to the program. That's already available to us.
Yeah, and you won't find it in program.cs either. It is part of the default configuration that is Blazor.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to set up this module task so it can be lazy loaded by Blazor when it needs it. So this is something that's new in .NET 5. This IJS object reference. It kind of builds upon the IJS runtime. I'll show kind of a better example of that in just a second. this video element reference matches up to our ref tag. And this is another benefit here. You said doing side by side, we can look at these things. So this video element goes to that reference there, which gives us access to that video tag, and we can pass that along to JavaScript. So that's how you set up a ref in Blazor. And again, if you're coming from like a jQuery world, that's that $.
Yeah, that
video
makes sense.
type of a thing. So that's
Yeah.
very similar there. We have an error message to display, so we'll set up a field for that. We want to know if the camera is streaming. We'll set up a field for that. And then I've got one more bit of code to add after the fact here. So this is a very important thing to point out when you're working with JavaScript. If you're using a JavaScript interrupt, you want to attach to the on-after-render async method. So this is a method that runs every time the component is rendered, but most importantly, it runs after the component is rendered the first time. The reason you don't want to use onInitialize async here is because the component can be initializing before the page is rendered, and JavaScript is not available yet. So you can run into some issues with that.
Is that like on document ready and things like that? Is that an equivalent?
Yeah, it's very, very similar to document.ready in the JavaScript world. And sorry, I've lost my chat here. Make sure there's no questions coming
Yeah,
in.
you're getting trolled. Like, where's your test project? I get that all the time.
Yeah. So this would be a tough one to test, Blazor, Eagle. All right. This would be a tough one to test. It's a very visual thing. And I suppose you could test maybe did the interrupt calls get made and that type of stuff. But the video element itself, you could test if it's there on the page, but I don't know if you could test if it's got a video stream attached to it. I'd love to hear your input on that one. So this module task thing is new in .NET 5, but what's really cool here is I can call JS runtime invoke async, and that's how we normally call a method. So we usually see this in prior .NET code like this, where we have invoke async, and then it's some JS function goes here, and it just immediately executes that thing. In here, we're going to tell JavaScript to load or import this JS module, which the path is the webcam.js. Yeah. So we're going to import webcam.js. This is an asynchronous thing, and it will go out and load that module when it needs it. So it lets us encapsulate our JavaScript code in a module, and what this line of code also allows us to do, or doesn't require us to do, is find our index page and put in a script tag. So there is no script tag to be added here. It's being handled by Blazor through the JS runtime instead. So this is nice for people consuming packages, because they can just load the NuGet package and they don't have to do any setup. So I like that. And it's
I like that too. That's nice and clean.
And it's only using it when that component is loaded. So if I put a bunch of JS files in my HTML, then they will be loaded when the page loads, and that could slow things down. This only loads when you hit that page and that specific component is initialized and rendered. So we've got we've got the module. Then whenever you call on the module, you need to await it to make sure it's available. And once you have the module, just like the JS runtime, it has the same invoke async method on it. So we can say module invoke async, and then we call the JavaScript method that we want to invoke, and then we'll do another.
Is that our first function, the export one?
So we'll do that there. So that lines up with our exported. That is the only method that we have that's actually callable from the outside.
Yeah, it's the only one for the export. Yeah.
So we'll export that. We'll pass the video element, and then we'll create. This is a factory pattern that comes with Blazor here. We'll say .NET. Oh, the screen keeps wanting to bounce around because I'm split. .NET object reference .create, and we're going to pass JavaScript a reference to this instance.
Okay.
So now JavaScript has a reference to this very instance of the webcam component that is initialized and rendered. With that, what we'll do is we will set up, remember those callback functions that we created?
Yeah.
We'll set up endpoints for those callbacks. So we have JS invocable means that JavaScript runtime can invoke this function. So it makes it public to that JavaScript namespace there. And through this reference we passed, we can invoke the on-camera streaming and the on-camera streaming error methods from JavaScript. So if we go back to our JavaScript code,
but they're not public, are they, those ones? Or are we adding something now?
So here it is.
Okay.
Yes, they
we're
are
attaching
public.
them to it. Yeah.
And when we pass .NET through, when we have an error, we'll say invoke method async on camera streaming error, which will invoke this method, and we're going to pass it a error message, and you can see that comes over on the .NET side as a string, and then we can say that the camera is not streaming, there was an error, show the error message, and call state has changed.
Cool.
So since this is happening asynchronously and we're not invoking an event like clicking a button or some other Blazor bound event, we have to call state has changed to make sure that the component is updated.
Okay, that makes sense. There was just one question that Eagle said, that are you sure the lazy pattern is what you want to use here? If you were doing it in the constructor or just when declaring the field, then yes. Otherwise, it would call the IJS runtime before JavaScript is ready. But I know you've tested all of this, so...
Yeah, this works. I think what Eagle might be alluding to is that I'm using this lazy reference here, which it might be overkill in this example. If I moved this out to a service, I think the lazy part would be more applicable. I think it's probably unnecessary in this scenario is what he's saying. I could just call this without the just without the lazy portion on it.
Yeah.
So it could be just task of IJS object reference. This started off when I was coding it as a service, and then I moved it to the component level because I felt it didn't need to be a service. Just so I don't break things, I'm going to leave it that way for now. But I think Eagle's right. I think it's excessive use of it. It will never actually be lazy loaded in the sense that it's a life cycle thing. It's a little bit too much probably to get into here. We got about 10 minutes left.
No, that's fine. I'll be quiet. I'll zip it. I've just got so many questions. Sorry.
No, it's a good observation that Eagle made. But the other invoke happens here. Anything that happens in this try section here is going to be successful. So we're going to go ahead and invoke that on-camera streaming method here as well. And that doesn't pass anything back. It just alerts us that it's actually streaming. There's no real reason to pass any sort of flag up because it's always true if it hits this point. So we'll go ahead and say the camera is streaming, so we can flip a bit there and let our UI know that that is happening, and then we'll update the UI here. And then we're not really making use of this is camera streaming yet. So let's go ahead and take this comment off. So we're going to put a wrapper around this. I don't have any specific CSS for this to really do anything yet. I left it kind of open-ended in case we want to use this for our project. But
the secret project.
Yeah, essentially what we have is a wrapper class around this.
Okay.
And what we can do with that wrapper class is we can toggle that wrapper class so that a CSS developer can say, all right, when the camera is streaming, it looks this, it's, got a nice placeholder or whatever border around it. Maybe there's a little red recording icon, something like that. If it's unavailable, then maybe we block it out with like a little broken video icon or something. So we have visual feedback for the user. I haven't taken advantage of that yet, but it is toggled in that wrapper because that happens when it's streaming. So we did all of that. We haven't really seen anything happen though. We've been coding a lot without any kind of real feedback here. We should be able to say webcam. I've got a using statement missing or something, or maybe I need to rebuild. Let's try rebuilding here. And then we could say webcam. There it is.
Yay.
So now we have webcam, and that actually should be it. We should be able to just add it to our project, and there was an error. So let's see what our error is.
Not an error. That's my influence.
404, it can't find webcam.js. So let's see here. Let's try to empty the cache here. Oh, can't empty the cache. That didn't work. So it's not finding webcam.js for some reason. You know what? I bet it is in the pathing. And it's not going to be // It is going to be / it's going to be in content / webcam. Is it just called component? I think is the namespace. Let's try that. We'll rebuild that.
Oh, that's a tricky one if it is that, because you'd have to know where it was going to be used, I guess, but it would always be the same.
Yeah, that wouldn't or shouldn't change. Let's see what it's trying to fetch here. Trying to look for that. I don't see the 404 happening because it's lazy loaded, maybe. Oh, maybe this is a different content webcam component webcam.js resolve module specifier blah blah blah. All right, so I'm not sure why it's not able to find our webcam component here.
Well, would it just be webcam component, not underscore content? I don't know. I'm trying to think about where this is in relation.
So let's take a look at the component.razor real quick. This seems to be able to find the CSS or the image for it without any namespacing there. It didn't seem to find it though. Let's try no path at all and see what we get from it. All right, what's happening here? Failed to resolve module webcam.js.
And in your earlier baked one, what did you have your path for?
So I had the file in www.root, and it wasn't in a component library. So it definitely has something to do with the component
Yeah.
library portion of this.
We've got some advice inside chat as well. Eagle's giving you some information. Let's see if chat can. So what it should be /_content. Try that. And then webcam component. Let's try that one.
There we go. I trust Eagle. He is the resident
We'll see
expert
that.
here.
Well, I just read that from the documentation. You're trusting me here.
There we go. That did it, Eagle. Thank you very much. Oh, and thank you, Layla. So here we go. The local host wants to use your camera. Do we want to allow it or block it? Let's block it.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. So we've got user media error, not allowed error.
That's not what you wrote. Is it? You made a nice human readable one, I thought.
Let's take a look here and see. Maybe we didn't trap. By we, I mean me. I thought permission denied error was what we were looking for. But it looks like we got... This may be a browser-specific thing as well. Not allowed error. So we might need to change the verbiage here. Or there might need to be an and statement in here. But we'll try that one real quick. Do a rebuild. Let's try to refresh that. Not allowed error still. So this is another interesting thing that happens too with the video component. Yeah, that's, I can't seem to trap that right. I'll have to look at that after the show. When you hit deny on this, and you refresh the page, you would expect maybe that you get prompted again. And I even cleared the cache here, and you don't get prompted again. So notice that. What you need to do is click up here on the little lock, and then you go to camera, and then you go in here and say either ask or allow. You hit allow, and then you have to reload the page from there. And hey, look at that.
That's you.
We have video. So it's working now. So through the magic of JavaScript, we now have support. I don't have time to code the rest of what I wanted to show today, but I will switch projects real quick here. Let me go ahead and make sure everything is saved here. I'm going to go to another window. I'm going to go to my first test where I coded this up and show you what other things we are capable of doing with this. So this is a little bit hard to see on, this will be fine. So through the video element and the canvas element, what we can do is we can take that video stream and we can capture a moment in time using the canvas element. So I'm going to go ahead and snap a picture here. So if I click on snap, you can see that I have a snapped image of that video stream. So if we look at the code here, again, I didn't have time to go through this in detail, but in this webcam interop, I have a function called getSnapshot. And what this will do is it will, again, get a reference to the video element. And I'm going to, using the magic of JavaScript, create a new element, a new canvas element on the fly. So we don't have to have a random canvas element sitting on the page waiting for this. We'll just new one up. So document.createElement is the JavaScript way of creating a new HTML element. We'll tell Canvas to go to a 2D context mode because Canvas can do 3D as well. So we'll say, give us a 2D context. We'll set the width and height of the canvas element to the same width and height of the video element. So I've got my video element, which I'm using two different references for. I've got a shorthand. I've created a shorthand reference anyhow. Get the width and height of the aliased and not aliased. So width and height gets set equal to the video. So we're going to say, give me the video width and height and make sure that the canvas matches that. Then using that canvas's context, we'll call the draw image API on it. And we'll pass the video element in. And again, you have to specify the width and height of this video element. So we're going to say, give us the video element. Here's the dimensions of that image that we want. And we're going to take and screen capture, basically, what is in that element. When we get that screen capture, we can call the canvas again, because the canvas now contains that screen capture. So we'll say canvas to data URL, and we want that in a JPEG or PNG format. So that's going to come back as a data URI. So we have the data, and then we can send the data to our Blazor app to display it, and then we'll call canvas.remove to take that element out of the DOM, because we don't need it anymore. Its sole purpose was to take a screenshot. So we'll rip it out of the DOM, we'll send the data back to the application, and then the application will then take the data and make use of it in by displaying it and maybe doing some other things that we'll show you Thursday and Friday. So I didn't get time to really go over the Canvas stuff in detail, but at least this gives you an idea of how Canvas and video can work together and do something pretty cool, like take a screenshot of a working webcam in the browser. Good stuff.
I think it's awesome. It's really, thank you so much for explaining those things for us. And I know I had a lot of questions, but that was really, really informative. Thank you so much.
No, it's great having you, Layla, and it will be fun to do some more streams with you Thursday and Friday, where we take advantage of this new Blazor superpower that we've gained.
Yes.
So we can take those images, and once you have an image, and it's a data stream, right? So it's not only a data URI, but we actually have the binary bits for that image. So we could do many things with that image. You could upload it to a server, you could put it in the cloud, you could manipulate the image, put different filters and things on it. It's one of those really open-ended things now where, as a developer, you're like, okay, now I know how to get this picture off the screen. I have so many options to go use this data for something.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And now we know how to do it. It's great.
And I don't know how this lines up with the audio thing you were working on, but hopefully this helps in some regard there.
Yeah, that I nearly rage quit my stream on Monday because I had to do JavaScript and I had an absolute meltdown, and chat were very patient with me.
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to see your stream, but
no, it's good. It's good you were asleep. It's good.
Hopefully
good that you didn't.
Some bits in here that you might find useful, like
Definitely.
the module pattern. I think is so much easier
yes.
than attaching a bunch of stuff to the window for Blazor to execute through the interop. I really prefer this. I have some other projects that use this, but they use it through TypeScript, which is really, really nice because this you get strong types and all of that stuff, and this pattern is kind of like the default pattern in TypeScript anyway. So you're already in the mindset of like public and private through exports. And then
No, this is great. I really this is great. Where is this available on GitHub yet?
It is,
Or
but
is it
it also contains some of our secret bits.
Okay,
So
okay, we keep it secret.
if you want to snoop, you can probably find it very easily. But there are some very important bits that are missing that won't let it do all of the things that it's going to do on Thursday and Friday. So there are some nuclear launch codes that are missing from the demo app. But it should be a lot of fun.
Yes, I'm very excited. Yeah, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me, Layla. And again, if you're new to, or if you're a repeat viewer for Code It Live and you haven't seen Layla before, make sure you click on her name in the Twitch chat there and follow her channel so you get alerts on when she's live streaming. And she will also be joining us again on Thursday and Friday on Code It Live. So you'll have another chance to follow there if you haven't done it already. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Eagle, tune in tomorrow, and you'll find out what the stake in the competition is. It's a porterhouse. That's what the stake in the competition is.
I didn't know that. How are you going to get it to me? In the post?
I will have to eat it on the live stream and just tell you how good it was.
Really? Really?
It's
That's
pandemic.
not very nice. I'm gonna sabotage us.
All right. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon.